Hello, I'm Liz Murray from Glengormley Methodist, and I'd just like to share a few thoughts with you today for your encouragement. Last March, Peter and I went on a wonderful holiday to Israel for 2 weeks, and we had so many memories to sustain us through this time that we've just been through. We arrived back just about a week before lockdown started. And many times during the past months, I have looked back to that holiday and thought about the experiences that we had. We were able to walk the routes that Jesus would have walked, that his followers would have walked, see where they lived. And it was a wonderful embedding experience in that country. We could try to imagine what it was like 2,000 years ago. And it got me to thinking, even at the time, 2,000 years ago, if I'd been a person living in a village at that time, how would I know or hear about Jesus? Maybe somebody in my family would let me know that they'd heard a rumour about him. Maybe my neighbours would chat. Maybe I'd hear about it in the synagogue or the Bush Telegraph. You know what that is? And if I heard about Jesus, would I just discard it, or would I respond? Would there be something in me that just pinged and said, you need to search him out? Was I hungry enough? Would I be curious? Had something got my attention? So the people in those days sought him out. And I don't live in first century Palestine. So how do I seek Jesus out today? How do I hear him? How do I recognize him in my everyday life? Well, I suppose the answer is I need to be able to hear that ping. I need to have my spiritual antennae up. How does it work? Recently, God spoke to me through honey, of all things. Words of scripture were shared to me from Psalm 119, verse 103. It says, "How sweet are your words to my taste. They are sweeter than honey to my mouth." So I stored that away for a little while. And then a few days later, my niece was talking to me. And we were talking about this and that, just general conversation. And she happened to mention that she worked with some Eastern European people and they loved honey. And my niece had said to them, well, there's local honey around here. And they said, oh, but it's not like the honey we have back home. Back home, the bees are able to feed on the nectar from all the flowers that there are. They get all their sustenance from wild nectar. Whereas here, sometimes local honey, although it's lovely, the bees are fed on sugar syrup, which sustains them and produces honey, but it's not the same as the stuff back home. So they send home for it and bring it over here to remind them of home. And I began to think about that conversation and the difference between being fed on sugar syrup or being fed on the real nectar that produces the nuanced flavours and the local aspect to the honey. And sometimes in my life, I need God's specific message to me, nuanced to my life, not just for general consumption. And I need my spiritual antennae up to hear these words. It takes time out, it takes reflection, it takes just linking up the different threads together. There won't be a blinding flash every time, but I will be able to see that thread of God's message running through and bringing his word from me to my little life. It's Advent now, and we're thinking about the Christmas story. We're thinking about God speaking through angels to Joseph and to Mary and to the shepherds. That was a big event. We're seeing him speaking through the stars, his creation, to the wise men. Do we need a big announcement? Perhaps big events need big announcements, but generally speaking, God doesn't speak to me in that way. Certainly, I've never met anybody who's seen an angel. But does he speak into my little life? And just this morning, I read something else, and it's from Matthew chapter 10. Are not 2 sparrows sold for a penny? Yet not one of them will fall to the ground apart from the will of your Father. And even the very hairs of your head are numbered. So don't be afraid. You are worth more than many sparrows. And this morning, I needed to hear just that. So, yes, God will speak into my little life and yours. His word to me is like honey to be savoured. In Psalm 34, verse 8, you'll be familiar with this. It says, taste and see that the Lord is good. Well, you know, those Eastern European friends of my niece's, the honey they sent back for came in big pots like this. And she, when she was passing, brought one to me. And when I use this, or when I start to use it, I haven't started yet, every time I take a spoonful to put on my scones or my toast, I will think of what God has taught me about honey and how he speaks to my little life in particular, and how he gets the nectar from all the different flowers in order to speak specifically to me. And I pray that God will bless us all with honeyed times this Advent and Christmas time. Happy days.